Welcome to a Celtic State of Mind. I'm John Dykes, and once again I am joined by Natasha, Meikle and Lawrence Connolly to talk about all things Celtic, what's been happening in the world of Celtic. The first thing I'm going to ask you, Natasha, is how did you celebrate Sunday? How did you celebrate that, and are you almost back to normal?
Almost back to normal. I think I'll probably have to make an apology halfway through the show if my voice starts to go. It certainly was not sounding good yesterday after the amount of champagne that was consumed following that penalty shootout. But we've got to celebrate it, don't we? And the voice is holding up so far, so let's hope that stays the same. Good.
I mean, you should never tire of celebrating with champagne, and there's been loads to celebrate. And I was just saying before we came on camera that, you know, it's one of the ones where there was so much wrong with the performance, but you didn't really want to focus on that because it was such a huge achievement. You know, something, and we've heard all the cliches, we'll never see it again. Certainly not in my lifetime, that's for sure. But I think it's time, obviously, with tomorrow's game fast approaching, we can pick a few holes, I guess, in the performance and maybe look ahead to the Ross County game. Lawrence, how did you celebrate after leaving the studio?
I put the Wolfies on, mate, full blast in the car for the journey back to Glasgow. Stopped in the local supermarket, bought a Cremont, case of beer, bottle of rum, and home and dispatched most of that, mate, while listening to more Wolfies.
Well,
watched the game again, managed to time the game, and replayed the live show and got them synced so that I could watch the game without commentary.
Wow, I never had you down as a Wolf Mother fan, Lawrence, but each and everybody to their own taste. Now, I can tell you, have you not? I could tell you how Scott Brown celebrated. 6 Peronis. That's how Scott Brown celebrated. What a guy. I'm going to actually open up the discussion on Scott Brown because there's been so much spoken about this season around his performance. His legs are gone. We've heard it so many times, Natasha. And I was looking at that game because, I mean, leading up to it, maybe I was getting a wee bit too excited after 2 performances by Sorrow, but I had Sorrow in my starting lineup. I realised that Lenny was going to be picking Scott Brown. And I think what we've seen, though, particularly in the first half, when we were playing well, Scott Brown did play a real captain's part in the performance. I mean, yes, we'll get into the nitty-gritty of what went wrong, how did it go wrong, and whether he should have played as many minutes as he actually did in extra time. But there was that moment, wasn't there, where he threw everything at that cross to try and score the goal, gets the header, gets the assist with Griffiths. And we've since seen the reaction, obviously, where he's having a few choice words with Naismith, etc. But the Naismith-Halliday drama that was ongoing, that's why Scott Brown was in there, just to get the guys put right back into their place, surely.
100%. And it's something I said at half-time as well on my Twitter page, was that in the first 45 minutes, that's exactly why you needed Scott Brown on the pitch, and Lennon's choice was justified. That's why you need your captain in a cup final, especially a cup final against Hearts. If we'd went with Turnbull and Sorrow, I'm worried they might have got a bit bullied in the middle of the pitch by players like Naismith and Halliday, who would have seen them there for the taking a bit. And they're not going to be able to stand up and win against players like Scott Brown. He's exactly what we needed in the middle of the park. I thought it was one of the better performances I've seen from him in a while. Yeah, like you say, should he have still been on as long as he did? Debatable. He wasn't the same in the second half, but to be fair, none of them were. And you look at him for that goal that, you know, Griffiths eventually got, and he put everything on the line for that. He launched himself at that ball. Nothing was going to get in the way of him making connection with that ball. And that's the sort of drive and attitude that Scott Brown brings to your team. And yeah, I'm happy that he started. After our chat on last Tuesday, overall, yes, agree with Lennon for one. Happy with that decision to start down.
That's the big thing, isn't it? I mean, I've criticised Neil Lennon all season, but you look at the performance, Lawrence, of Scott Brown on the day, the leadership that he showed, the fact that, you know what, we should have been talking about that as being the winning goal. And, you know, what a way to sign off if he was to then maybe drop out of the team and play less regularly until the rest of, you know, the end of the season. That would have been brilliant. We could have looked back on that moment where he's basically just thrown his entire body. And for anyone who's wondering how I know that, I mean, we've got our spies everywhere in the Axholme camp, even in the local co-op where Scott goes in to buy a few beers. So we know these things at a State of Mind Towers. So yeah, when you're looking at that performance though, Lawrence, I think, you know, he was struggling to walk up to Craig Gordon at the end of the game, such was the injury. The likelihood of him playing tomorrow night's probably slim. Would you have kept him in the side, or is it about time we did bring in Soro? Because it's going to take me on to the where did it all go wrong question in just a few moments, and I think it was throughout the midfield that it went wrong, to be fair. But yeah, talk to me about your view on Scott Brown's performance and what we do with him now.
I wouldn't have started him, but, you know, as Natasha said, amazing 45 minutes. I think, yeah, Hearts just seem to be right on top of our defence every time. Second half, winning the second balls. So cracking header, as you say, put everything in the line. But I think he just didn't have the legs to cover where we needed to cover. So maybe an early sub. Should he have been on the park for the second half? Probably not. But there's a few players that probably shouldn't have been on the park. Naismith being one of them. You know, you can stamp in a player, you can help him in the face. He fouls the keeper for the second goal. And that's just the decisions Naismith got in his favour. Yeah,
no, you're right.
It's just the biased decisions from beating concerning one Hearts player.
I think you're talking there about the impeding Hazard, and we saw that whole sideshow of Brown and Naismith, the corner kicks, and Brown's trying to protect the goalkeeper and Naismith is using all of his experience. And you know, it's one of these things, he's a player you love to hate, but even the Hearts fans who were on the Play On podcast last night admitted that there was a foul there. There was a foul and the goal shouldn't have stood as a result of that. But when you're looking at a game like that, and I think Natasha's already touched on this, Halliday and Naismith would have been all over the likes of Soro, having, you know, 2 starts under his belt. He doesn't know the Scottish game like Scott Brown, who knows it inside and out like the back of his hand. So yes, justifiable decision by Neil Lennon. You take your hat off when he gets it right. There's a few other things that might come into this conversation where you think he didn't get it right, but he won the game. But it was like we scraped through with this by the skin of our teeth. We only just won it, and that takes me on to this point that I've been making for a couple of weeks, and it's all about what happens when Celtic's forward play breaks down, Natasha. What happens is we can't deal with the counter-attack. We don't have a defence that's solid enough. We're so easy to cut through. Sometimes it's just a high ball over the top. And I think that's where Soro was really, really useful, because he was breaking up those counters. We're really bad going from attack to defence at the moment, aren't we?
Yeah, that's the issue. As good as we are going forward, you know, the minute you lose the ball, which we are frustratingly doing regularly often at the edge of the box, Christie being one of the culprits for this, is slightly overplaying, losing the ball at the edge of the box, and all of a sudden, you know, we're defending on the lines of our own box because of how quickly the other teams break up the park. Sometimes it's taking 1 or 2 passes to completely cut us apart, bypass the midfield, and you're onto our centre halves or our fullbacks who, for whatever reason at the moment, aren't coping with that. And you find yourself susceptible to a cross ball or having to defend. And we know that is a weakness at the moment. So it's frustrating. And like you say, we're missing someone in the middle of the park to do that role of breaking it up. Scott Brown used to do it a bit more effectively than he does now. Obviously, you know, a fitness thing, he's older, the legs maybe aren't quite what they used to be. And you're right, that is the role that Soro needs to come in and play now and offer us a bit of stability and a bit of strength in that middle of the park.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, I'm looking forward to, I say look forward, what I mean is I'm looking ahead. I very rarely look forward to many games these days. I'm looking ahead to the Ross County game, and the decision might be taken out of Lenny's hands, because it did look as though Scott Brown was really struggling with that injury. But when you're looking at him going forward, Lawrence, Scott Brown, what is his best role? Do we use him sparingly? I mean, you're going into battle at Ibrox again. And it would be another big shout if Scott Brown was left out of that team, for the very same reasons that we've gone through on the podcast already. Do we use him more sparingly? Is he as big an influence on the sideline, in the dressing room, leading up to games? Because, I mean, what we do get from time to time is an insight into what he gives to the team. First half against AC Milan in the San Siro, I thought he was excellent. I thought, like most of the Celtic team in the first half on Sunday, he was excellent. But he certainly doesn't have the legs, and I don't mind saying that now. I know it's been said for about 4 or 5 seasons that can get him through 90 minutes after 90 minutes. And, you know, I would suggest that maybe tomorrow night we introduce Sorrell. We continue playing Sorrell against the likes of Ross County and teams that have been getting at us, unfortunately. But in the big games like Rangers, in the big games like the Cup final on Sunday, you know, I would not be surprised if that's the games that we start using Bruni for. What's your thoughts on that, Lawrence?
Yeah, I don't think he could do 90 minutes 2 or 3 times a week. You know, he can't do Sunday, Thursday, Sunday, can he? He doesn't have the legs for it. We need to play Sorrell. We've got 3 games before we go to south side of Glasgow. So I think Sorrell's got to play all 3 of those games if results go away. Scott Brown's definitely got a huge influence when he plays. You know, in San Siro, that Gazetta dello Sport we're raving about his performance. You know, he did 60 minutes there. He's definitely got at least a brilliant first half in him. Yeah, you can see him getting some game time at Ibrox. But we've got to be wise how we use him. And I think the players respond to him. I think he needs to be saved for the bigger games or the more important games. Right now, what's the most important games, right enough? And I'm going to go with Sorrell against the smaller teams, because we're in must-win territory for every game in the league just now.
We absolutely are. I mean, to be honest with you, because obviously we just created history, I loved the scenes of Scott Brown celebrating Natasha. I loved that. The fact he was getting in about people's faces. I mean, we've heard a lot of kind of comments, and we'll get onto the Edouard comments, from pundits who think that they've got to hold us to some kind of different standard. This is professional sport. The adrenaline is pumping through these guys. You've just scored what you think is a winning goal. Bruni's probably thinking, that's great because I can't last another 5 minutes and hopefully we've won the game. And you're giving somebody pelters because you almost finish your game by stamping on you in the first half. So I just think that's great. That's just part and parcel of the game, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, come on. All the people who are making comments like that have clearly never played professional football, or they just have an agenda against Celtic. It's one of the two. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, come on, Naismith gives it out regularly, not just to Celtic. You know, you see him doing it regularly against other teams. You know, you remember the pictures of him standing over Hayes laughing. Like, he can take it. If he's going to give it out like that, then come on, in a cup final with that sort of environment and atmosphere, then he can take it. Get on with it. Nothing wrong with it.
No, you're absolutely right. There was quite a few players leading up to the game that we were wondering, should they start, should they not. The one guy who didn't get his start was Sorrell, of course. But I think Neil Lennon got it right. Looking at the performance, it would be difficult to argue that he got Conor Hazard right. I know that he was criticised for a couple of flaps, but then in the penalty shootout, he just came into his own to such a point. UEFA tweeting about this kid who at the beginning of December was a third choice goalie, and now he's a hero. I mean, what was your thoughts all about Natasha, about his overall performance?
I mean, he looked like a third choice goalie, didn't he? I mean, yeah, absolutely. He stepped up and saved those 2 penalties very well. Absolutely delighted for him from that perspective. But throughout the game, he looked jittery, didn't he? He looked nervous. You know, often you saw him coming for a ball, stopping, coming again. You know, there was just no commitment to whatever action he was going to take. And that's just experience. I wouldn't say it's youth so much. He's not that young, you know, he's nearly 23. But it's just the lack of game time, the lack of first team games. And your third professional game being, you know, a cup final is a big ask of anyone, especially in a position like a goalkeeper. But I think there is a bit of, added pressure there. So yeah, he looked like a third choice keeper for me. Would Barkas or Bain have been any different? I'm not sure. I think it probably just leaves us confirmed in the position that January we need to enter the market for a goalkeeper.
Oh, absolutely. And this is the big concern even for tomorrow night's game, Lawrence, because there's another dilemma on Neil Lennon's desk when he's picking the team. And that dilemma is there's a guy who is the hero. He's a hero of the hour. He saved 2 penalties. But as Natasha said over the piece, I mean, far too jittery. And I've been giving him all the plaudits for having this commanding presence. But, you know, and I don't want to give him too hard a time because obviously, ultimately, he played a massive part in the final result. Does that give Lenny another selection headache for tomorrow night?
Nah, not for me. Hazard did a few mistakes in the cup final. I think he's going to be the better for it. The second goal, yeah, he should maybe stand a bit stronger, but he's fouled. You know, he's there. He's sold the third goal. He's saved 2 penalties. The ball where he comes out the box but doesn't slide into Naismith. I think, remember, Gordon done something similar in the semi-final, but he'd taken the player out. At least Hazard has the presence of mind of going, I've got to force him to play this quick, because if I take him out, I'm off the park. So, you know, I've heard a few players saying you can't come for that ball. Well, if he doesn't come for it, Naismith's got time to take control of the ball and he's 1-on-1 with the keeper. I think Hazard's done everything he could there. He's come out, he's forced him to just put a toe on the ball, not allow Naismith to set itself and hit it. He's a bit nervous. His nerves are showing, but Natasha's touched. It's his third first-team game. It's quadruple trebles on the line. But you know what? When we needed them to step up, it's 2 penalty saves. What's our choices just now? I think he keeps the number 1 shot.
I think,
if anything, he'll grow in confidence from those 2 penalty saves and, you know, pick up his first winners' medal. He's 3 games into Scottish football. Some people have over 250 games and get no medals to show for it. Connor's got 3 and he's got a cup winners.
Yeah, you're right. I think the big thing for me as well, Natasha, is trying to get that consistency at the back. You know, trying to get the central defenders having an understanding with the goalie behind them, and chopping and changing for me would seem like a bad idea. I mean, Craig Gordon obviously also played quite a part in the game, and obviously he was made a fool of at the Panenka that Edouard just dinked in. But again, I mean, what do you expect Edouard to do? To apologise if he scores a goal? No. That's just an absolute nonsense, isn't it?
Oh, completely. Like, do me a favour. I mean, the striker's standing up to take a penalty. What do you want him to do? Only score in a certain way? Is he not just trying to score in any way he can? Like, nah, come on, give me a break. That's absolutely ridiculous. I think Neil McCann, out of everyone, had the most ridiculous comment on that. I mean, I heard it compared, I think it might have been Gary Caldwell who did it, to, you know, a player doing a few step-overs before putting the ball in the box. You know, is that disrespectful? Or, you know, a nutmeg, is that disrespectful? You know, where are we drawing the line here? Is it because it was Edouard scoring for Celtic in a cup final? Is that what makes it disrespectful? I don't know. But absolute nonsense. The striker is standing there to try and score the penalty in any way he can. If he wants to chip it down the middle, then fair play to him. You know, he's the one who's brave enough to do that. He looks stupid if it doesn't come off. And for him, it does. And Craig Gordon's reaction is ridiculous. And the commentary from people like Neil McCann is even more ridiculous.
No, you're spot on. I think back to a TV show. I think it was back in the day when we used to watch TV, Natasha, and there was a show called Balls of Steel. And I was just thinking of Odsonne Edouard, because to have that, you know, the grit to actually try and pull that off is something else. But it also makes me go into the next subject of Leigh Griffiths, because I'm thinking that tomorrow night is the perfect opportunity. When you look at Edouard, yeah, he thoroughly enjoyed that strike, as he should, but he definitely still looks like a lone figure up top, and he needs that support. And I think the reason I'm saying Leigh Griffiths, as well as coming on and making an impact once again, like we know he can. I mean, we're now playing domestic football. We know that you can line up Leigh Griffiths against the likes of Ross County, he will get you goals, and any other team in the league for that matter. So I'm now thinking to myself, well, Odsonne Edouard, Leigh Griffiths, let's get the old gang back together for the rest of this push. Is that what needs to be done to salvage 10 in a row? You've mentioned bringing in a new goalie. I totally agree with that. That's a must in January. Do you think Lenny is going to buck this trend of playing one up front and bring Griffiths and Edouard back together as a front two?
I hope so. I'd certainly like to see it. He says he's tried everything he can, and he keeps changing it. He's not tried this yet. Not enough. Not for me. Let's give it a go. Let's try both of them. You know, like you say, domestically, a team like ours should be able to play 2 strikers. If he doesn't, if we, you know, tomorrow night, if we still go with one on top, I'd quite like to see it be Griffiths. At least start him. You know, if we're talking about his fitness being an issue and game time being an issue, you know, give it to him. You know, as good as Edouard's, you know, penalty was and as important as it was, otherwise I was relatively disappointed with him on Sunday. You know, he missed some pretty good chances. that you think if you put Griffiths in that spot, would you have scored them? Possibly, but I think it's preferably time to try and play them both together as a two up front. And if not, I would like to see us try Griffiths up front in his own and see how he goes.
Oh, definitely. We're getting loads of good messages coming in. Tyrone is, hello PJD, thank you for getting the name right. That doesn't bother me that much, to be honest. Congratulations on the weekend cup final marathon. Let's have a positive day today. Keep the negative stuff for another time. God bless. Well, yes, just a wee reminder on the weekend or marathon. It was some weekend, it really was, and the final eBay items are just being wrapped up just now to be sent out from the auction. We're sitting at around 27 grand because someone had given us £250 and I'd forgotten all about it until this morning, so that pushed up the total. It wasn't on the GoFundMe page and it wasn't in the auction, so having looked at a screen for 24 hours, I had forgotten about that sneaky 250 quid. So that's part of the pot. Unbelievable weekend of fundraising by the Celtic support. Natasha, did you get a chance to watch Lawrence and me celebrating our reaction? Because I looked back thinking to myself, I completely forgot that we were even broadcasting. It was just two fellas watching the game.
I did watch it, yeah, I absolutely loved it, and I'm probably glad that it wasn't me doing that stint, so fair play to you for both sitting there and letting that be filmed, because I'm certainly glad it wasn't my reaction that was getting broadcast out. But oh yeah, what a moment, right? What a moment. And we can be positive, we were positive. You guys were positive all weekend, it was incredible. And everyone who came on was very, very positive. And we were all absolutely delighted. It was a great weekend, a great result, great fundraising. What more could you want? And now, it's Tuesday, we're 48 hours on and we're beginning to analyse things. I think that's fair. I
think it's fair as well. After the game, your emotions are all over the place. You're watching things. You're watching Neil Lennon staring up at the sky, and you're thinking, what is he contemplating at this moment in time? He's a history maker. We all know he's the only player and manager to win the treble in the game in Scotland. Unbelievable accolades. And then I start straight away seeing Twitter being flooded with people saying, it's time for Lennon to go now. Let's get him out the door. But, we've got to realise that's not going to happen. It is going to be reviewed in January. And that takes us into the next kind of stage of the discussion in relation to Lenny. I don't think much has changed. I think we've seen the best and the worst of Neil Lennon Celtic all in one game. There was moments of that game that it was kind of real schoolboy stuff. Interestingly enough, Robbie Nielsen said they didn't change anything. And I was looking at it. Now, this might seem far too basic, Lawrence, but I'm going to ask the question anyway. And it goes back to when Ronnie Dyler took over the Neil Lennon side, and Lenny had been obviously in charge at that stage for 4 and a bit seasons. And he reckoned that the side wasn't fit enough. Now, I know that Ronnie Dyler was really focused on fitness. He wanted his players to be 24-hour athletes. He, put a lot of onus on diet and conditioning, brought his own guys over from Norway. But the comments were that the team wasn't fit. Seeing that second half when I'm watching Celtic, I just didn't think they were at the races. I thought Hearts completely overrun them. Now, Lawrence, I'm not an expert in fitness, as you can maybe tell. But is it something as simple as that our team is not conditioned? We've got a lot of injuries. Players that aren't fit get injured far more often. That's that's just basics. But I don't think we looked fit on Sunday. What's your thoughts on that, Lawrence?
They're definitely fit with me. But yeah, Delia said it was a problem. The Celtic will have the stats to prove it, but the fitness isn't all going to be down to the manager. I'm sure we've got fitness coaches. I know Jim McGuinness, who was really hot in it. He's at Galway now after a space. Was it New York he ended up in for a while after Celtic?
Yeah,
he was over there as manager. Now he's back at Galway. Maybe it's time to bring him back in. And Rodgers rated him. We know Scott Brown's, we've touched on it, we thought his legs was gone. It's a big part of the team. You're kind of defensive midfielder. Natasha's touched on it. They're right on top of the centre-halves, which really doesn't suit us when we've got 2 centre-halves that are similar in style. They seem confused about who's going to the ball and who's sweeping at times, where that should just be natural. But both of our guys seem to be guys that are attracted to the ball, which you want one of your centre-halves to be. You want one of them to be making, but you need the other guy to be a bit more, right, I need to sweep because he's going to he's going to attack the ball. And even something as simple, you saw in the second half where the ball was played back and both of them went to it. Then realised, who's taking this ball? And Connolly ended in one-on-one with Hazard, and Hazard saves. It's the style of centre halves. I think Duffy and Julian are too similar. So things like that's not helping us. But fitness, we're professional athletes. As much as we say it's down to the manager, we've got to be looking after our own fitness. But I did hear something interesting, or read an interesting quote from Griff, saying he needs minutes on the park to get fit. As far as he's concerned, he's fit. He needs the minutes on the park. But if you look at Lenny's teams, they've always done well from kind of Christmas onwards. That's when I think Alex Ferguson famously said, it's in the running, because no trophies are handed out in December. Well, apart from this year, but it's kind of been unusual with the Cup final December. Lenny's part in a quadruple treble, 100 games, 80 wins, 11 draws, 9 losses. 85.5% win rate. That's phenomenal for any manager. Can he do what he done last year and get his team firing on all cylinders for the run-in from now until the end? I think starting Griff, as Natasha says, starting 2 up top would go a long way to do that, because I think Eddie certainly benefits from playing alongside a striker. Griff would seem like his natural partner. I mean, we remember we were flying last kind of January, February, March. Those two looked devastating together. Yeah. Is this Lenny's plan? It's time to unleash Eddie and Griff up front? Well,
I take your point, and I know that he's contributed a massive amount, Neil Lennon, to our current success. But one of the big figures that's kind of hanging over our head at the moment, a big dark cloud, is the number 16, and that's how many points we are behind our nearest, the guys that are leading the table, Lawrence, and that's the big issue for me. So I take on board, yes, Neil Lennon has been a phenomenal success and he's played a huge part, so give him credit for that. But then on the flip side, if his team's not fit, let's put it on the players. That comes to the culture. That turns into the culture, and that's the word Neil Lennon used after the one of our many poor performances this season. There needs to be a culture change. That is a culture of football club. When you're looking at it, Natasha, you always seen Celtic as being the fittest team. Now that goes right back to Neil Mockin, who, obviously I researched really, for months and years on the Neil Mockin story. His remit was quite simple when he took over as a trainer, as it was then known at Celtic, and that was just to get Celtic the most fit club in Europe, and then you can sort everything else out after that. And that's exactly what Neil Lennon needs to do with his side. I do think there's an issue. There's an issue, yeah. If you want to pick on Lee Griffiths, which I've done a wee bit this season, there's a big onus on Lee Griffiths to get himself fit. Of course there is. But it just seems to me, Natasha, yeah, we've played a lot of games this season against a higher calibre of opposition, and I take that as well when you're comparing it to what Hearts have been up against. But we just seemed as though we were done, and I was looking at that second half thinking, what on earth? I left Lawrence for 5 minutes, I come back and they've pulled a goal back. I was looking at that thinking, what the hell has gone wrong? It was almost as if the Hearts had been given a rocket at half time and Celtic just took the foot off the pedal. Do you have any concerns yourself, Natasha, about that cultural aspect of the fitness of our team at the moment?
I do, yeah, and it's something, the fans are concerned about, something I'm concerned about, but it's also something that Lennon has recognised himself. He's come out and said there are fitness concerns. I know that's sort of got you turning your head out. It's December. Why are there fitness concerns? And why is it not being addressed by now? A club like ours has the, best facilities in the league. It should have access to the best, your nutritionists and your physios and, everything that goes on in the background that is necessary to get a team fit. We have that, so what is the issue? Or if we don't have it, then why not? Years gone past, and even to an extent on Sunday, I thought, get to extra time. Surely we are going to be the fitter team here. A club like Celtic against a championship team going into, extra time, playing 120 minutes. You've got to assume that the championship team are the ones that will tie in, and Celtic are the ones that will dominate, and the extra time will in fact suit. And, that just didn't happen at all. We had 15 minutes left of extra time to hold on to a lead in a cup final that would secure a quadruple treble, and they didn't manage to do that. For me, that's the most worrying aspect. That's that's criminal not to be able to hold on to that lead for 15 minutes. When we should have had the ability, the fitness, the presence of mind to see that game out. We didn't, and that is my biggest worry.
No, definitely. Special mention as well to Chris Ayer. I think that Chris Ayer has come in for a lot of stick all season, to be honest. I know that after the game at Kelly, where we drew 1 each away from home, he was dropped unceremoniously. He comes back in because Julian was injured. And I think, you know, when you were to look at everybody's performances in terms of the defence at Celtic this season, he's probably been our best performer. I was delighted for him. I really was. And I think that was shown in my celebration. But what I was kind of screaming at the screen was that boy wanted that. I mean, we could keep going on about agitators and those who aren't playing for the jersey, because that's what we want as football fans. I think there's a big sign that Encham must be one of the guys, because he's nowhere near the team. And the Encham that we loved last season, scoring against Lazio, giving us those great memories, seems to be on his way out. But you look at Ayer, you look at his performance and his response to scoring that winning penalty, and then a wee bit after, you know, the angle that the Celtic TV gives you behind the goals, and it zooms in on Ayer and he's just having a moment to himself. And for me, I'm looking at him thinking, you know, we need to keep him. We really, really need to keep him in January. Lawrence, I'm going to come to yourself. I've been a big champion of Chris Ayer. Get a lot of stick from a couple of my mates on WhatsApp about that. I think as a right back, and it was you that recommended he should play there, I think we've found his best position.
Yeah, definitely. I think it suits us to have a tall right back. It allows us to change positions, you know, it allows us to switch to a free kind of more naturally. We've been weak at cross balls and corners. It gives us an extra bit of height. He's brilliant going forward. He just eats the ground up effortlessly. His passing, his ball retention, you know, his balls into the box have all been good. One of the goals at the weekend, he gets beat, but he's entitled to think McGregor or Brown should be covering him and blocking the cross, probably. I think Chris is somebody you would want to hold on to. Will we hold him beyond the summer? I don't know. But Cham's definitely someone that could go. You know, whether it's playing for the jersey or whatever phrase you want to use, I think he's a guy that always gives 100%, and it's not something you can say about everybody in that team. You know, there's players that hide, there's players that don't show for the ball. There's like, take Taylor for example, the amount of stick he was getting beginning of the season, but he always showed for the ball. He didn't hide. He always put the effort in. You know, that's maybe the minimum we should be asking of players. But in our team, there's been maybe 6 or 7 players not showing for the ball, not putting the effort in. And sometimes that's 6 or 7 players in a game, not just the first half of the season. And that's when you get problems, you know, when people decide to hide or not show the angle. They're making other players look bad because they're not getting an option to really support them.
No, you're absolutely right. I was just saying, Natasha, before we came on about the Hearts guys last night, talking about how it was a classic cup final, how it was a great game for the neutral spectator, and they were comparing it to games like the 4-3 game, Motherwell v Dundee United, and I'm thinking, how on earth could you have enjoyed that? I mean, I didn't enjoy any of it. I've got to say, first half, I'm thinking, well, we could put them to the sword, this is going to be 3 or 4-0, a lot easier than I thought it would be. But then after half time, it was just absolute torture to watch. I mean, I just find that impossible to enjoy a game like that. But one thing that really struck me after the game was 2 of the biggest successes in the history of Celtic Football Club. 9 in a row in the Quadruple Treble, and we've all been watching it on streams and on the BBC and talking about it remotely like we are just today. And I've heard people saying Celtic fans have suffered more than most. That's horrific when you think about it. We're going to look back on these occasions and then say, you know, we weren't there. We weren't there to enjoy them. And then you look at this spectre of 1 in a row for somebody else and you think, well, we can't even enjoy the 10 if unless we get our finger out. I mean, that's pivotal, isn't it? When you think, you know, all the great moments as a Celtic supporter, and you think, Tommy Rodgers scoring that goal in the rain with the lightning and the thunder, and Craig Gordon dropping to his knee, all the great moments you've seen as a fan, and we've missed 2 of the greatest moments, Natasha.
Oh, absolutely. If you think about it too much, it is absolutely devastating. It's something I said at the end of last season when we won the 9th title, is that, you know, yes, you know, the season's cancelled and, you know, a lot of people are missing out on the running of games, but nobody lost out more than Celtic. Nobody lost out more than us not getting to see our team win that 9th trophy in a row. And like you say, leading up to a possible 10, our last 9 years supporting Celtic have led up to this season. Each season its own has been brilliant, and they all have in a way been leading up to this sort of pinnacle. We might get there, we might not. That's up for debate. But if we do, the fact that we've spent 9 years leading up to this moment, not to get to be there is, it's hard. It's awful. There's a lot of awful things going on in the world at the moment. But for us, this is one of them. And it's difficult, but there really is nothing we can do. We've got to make the most of it, celebrate how we can in our houses and talk about it on podcasts like this. But I'd be lying if I didn't say, I missed, our usual Hampden rituals. I missed the catch up, the drinks before the game, the walk up to Hampden, the atmosphere, being surrounded by people. I miss that. Of course I do. We all do. And the sooner we get back to that, the better.
Absolutely. It seems like a long time ago that we've seen Lee Griffiths scoring that hat-trick at Celtic Park, and we've already spoken about Lee Griffiths. But let's have a look ahead towards the game tomorrow night. And I think one of the biggest elements of tomorrow night's game is the reintroduction of John Hughes into the dugout. I didn't realise he'd been out of the game for 3 years, since his last stint as a gaffer at Wraith Rovers. John Hughes was on one of our other shows, on A State of Mind, just last week actually. On Friday night he was on our chat show, which is the Salt and Sauce show. Now, Natasha, I don't know the reference to Salt and Sauce. I mean, apparently it's a Fife thing and an Edinburgh thing, but I didn't know what that meant. But basically that's what you asked for if you go to a chippy, by all accounts. I didn't realise that. But they spoke to... Is that what happens in your area, Natasha? You ask for salt and sauce, do you?
I can confirm living in Edinburgh now that salt and sauce is very much a thing, and I'm completely converted. Definitely something that I can support.
Salt and sauce. The big thing for me that I took from it when I was listening, and I spoke to Yogi during the lockdown as well, similar to what we're doing just now, is he was a loss to the game. Now, people might not think he's a refined, forward-looking gaffer. I don't really agree with that. I really don't. And I know that he'd done a lot of work as a mentor for the SFA, for the coaching side of things, during that 3 years. And I've got a lot of time for Yogi, and I thought it was just a matter of time before he got back in the saddle. On the one hand, I'm delighted for him on a personal level. But on the other hand, I'm thinking, well, that might just give Ross County what they need in terms of a boost. Lawrence, obviously, they came to Celtic Park fairly recently and stopped this magnificent run that we were just celebrating on Sunday. What do you think is going to happen tomorrow night? I mean, can John Hughes give them a breath of kind of fresh air that they're looking for? Or, can Celtic get a wee bit of revenge for Ross County knocking us out the cup?
I think he's definitely going to give them a breath of fresh air. I think, he's definitely more experienced manager than Kettle will. But the big question is what Celtic will turn up, isn't it? Mm-hmm. We should have a lift. There should be a bit of pressure off. We were looking for the quadruple treble. Sometimes at the beginning of the season, we're maybe looking at quintuple treble, and 10 in a row. Well, quintuple's gone. We've got quadruple treble. There's only 10 in a row left to play for. Taking us a Scottish Cup, but just now I think the pressure's really on 10 in a row, so it's what Celtic's going to turn up. Does Lenny start Sorrow again? Will the players play a bit freer, having 3 games in? Hazard's won a medal, a bit more confident. He's had 2 big penalty saves. Hopefully he's get a bit more settled in. The players a bit more belief returning to them. Do we start with Griff, and Eddie? I think that's a big question. I think it's what Celtic's going to turn up. Because if the best Celtic turns up, it doesn't matter what Ross County turns up. It really is. Can Lenny get the best team in the park? And hopefully the sentiment's gone now after the cup final. He doesn't owe any of the players anything after that. I wouldn't have thought. It's up to him just to pick the players in form.
Well, I think you're right, because when you look at it, Natasha, we've seen the best and the worst of Celtic on Sunday, didn't we? We've seen everything that we can do in the first half against the kind of more language, terrible defending of the second half. But I was very interested to hear that Neil Lennon spoke about this quadruple treble pressure and how that had affected these players. Again, we've heard a lot of things that have been used as mitigating circumstances around our poor performances this season. Do you think it might lift a bit of pressure tomorrow night? Do you think we'll play with this kind of fluidity that we've not been seeing?
I hope so. I was surprised to hear him say that, the players have been feeling the pressure of this cup game coming up, and hopefully it does act as a catalyst, sort of, bounce off the back of, and that it does take a weight off their shoulders, if you like. For me, I'm a bit surprised about that. They're used to it. A lot of those players have played in a lot of cup games, and there's been a lot of pressure in a lot of different games. For me, a cup final's never run of the mill, but it's not something that they're, not used to. So I'm surprised when he said that, but, we'll go with that and take it, and hopefully it does take that weight off their shoulders. There's a sense of relief, and we move on, and it kickstarts the rest of our season. And like Lauren said, now we can pick players based on merit. We're not saving anyone for a final. We're not having sentiment keeping anyone for a final. Let's just pick the best team for each game, and bounce on from here. And I think some players will have to be dropped anyway. I think obviously Brown looks very injured at the moment. He needs a bit of a break following that. Get Sorrell back in, get Griffiths in the team. Otherwise, I'm not sure we'll make too many changes. Let's try and get it a bit consistent and have a good run.
Yeah, without a doubt. One big thing during the kind of lockdown that I spoke to John Hughes about, which I found really interesting, is that obviously Yogi gave Ryan Christie his big break. He gave him his debut in senior football. And he was saying at that time, and that must have been 6-7 months ago, the video's up on YouTube. I look as though I'm filming it from a cave because the lighting wasn't the best. It's a bit like what Lawrence is looking like at the moment. And he was saying that, Celtic need to get Ryan Christie signed up now. And he was saying this 6-7 months ago. He was, even though he's got another year on his contract after June, Yogi was saying that boy needs to be tied down to a deal. It's still not happened. And that's a bit of a concern and a worry for me. I know that he's got his critics, but you've just got to look at the goal he scored, Natasha, on Sunday. It was just world class. If that happens down in England, they're calling it a world class goal. Ryan Christie hits one into Rose Ed in the second half, and everybody's screaming at Ryan Christie. I mean, what he done in the first half, it's almost in fact, it was better than the goal that he scored against Aberdeen. And that's a wee bit of concern for me, the fact that we've still not got Ryan Christie tied down. People might absolutely refuse to agree with that, and Terry Tibbs doesn't agree with salt and sauce. He's all about the salt and vinegar. I've got to agree with you there, Terry. Absolutely. Now Kevin Graham has joined the show to say but thank you to Kevin Graham for giving me a day off yesterday. Actually, Kev, that was great that you presented the show on my behalf. It's gone under the current setup. We need to rebuild. There's something in the back of my mind, right, because I'm a realist. I totally am a realist, and I'm looking at where Rangers are and how they're playing. And I'm looking for every single detail to say, are they going to slip up? There was a wee sign at Tannadice, and I mentioned that. There was another wee sign again at Motherwell. But then you try and put yourself in their shoes, and that's a horrible thought sometimes, but put yourself in their shoes. They'll be looking at their results saying, that's championship winning form. We've had a challenge, or we've not played well. So if that was Celtic scraping a couple of results together, like those two results that they've had, that's what we would be saying. And obviously in the middle of that, they get beat by St Mirren. And that was the biggest sign that, yeah, this team is beatable. So I totally get what Kevin Graham's saying, because I'm a realist, but there's just a wee bit in the back of my mind, and maybe it's what exists when you've watched Celtic for so many years, that wee fairy tale where you think, we win our 3 games in hand, we win at Ibrox, and it's game on. I'm still thinking like that, even though I know everything that's wrong with Celtic, Natasha. Are you still of the opinion yourself that we need to make big changes in January to salvage the league campaign?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny how, a couple of good results and a trophy win makes you think, let's take a step back here, let's reassess. Do we still need to rebuild? Do we, keep going under this, push on with Lennon? No, I don't think so. I think nothing has been seriously addressed by any of the last few games. If anything, I'm more worried after the cup game, the way that second half performance went was as bad as it's been. So, if you're telling me that we're on, the rise now and things are starting to get better, and, in that last second half we played was as bad as I remember it, then, things aren't really improving, are they? So no, unfortunately, I think we do still need to have a look at the setup as a whole. Players need to come in, players need to go out, and the management team needs Adi to dismissed, reshuffled. Something needs to happen there. And I think it will. I think a lot of the reaction at the end of the game, including, Lennon's reaction, does suggest that might be the last one for him. that look to the sky could be a sign that he knows as well as we all do, or as well as the board does, that really could be the last one, and that regardless of what happens over the next couple of games, his position is going to be reviewed in January, and the likely outcome of that is going to be someone coming in to replace him. I think that's still the case, and I think that's still what we need. Remains to be seen, but for me, yes, I agree with Kevin. We need to rebuild and push on in January.
We do look at every nuance of everything that's said and done when it comes to Celtic, and it was a good point, Natasha, where Lenny's looking up to the sky as if he's just, soaking it all in, knowing that he's not going to see the ticker tape and all that kind of stuff again, perhaps. Talking about body language, though, when it went to 3-3, and I think I mentioned it at the time because I've been critical of John Kennedy this season, Neil Lennon almost just, disappeared into his puffer jacket. He's sitting there on his seat and you're thinking, Lenny, you need to drive this team on. And, on the contrary, you had Robbie Neilson, a much less experienced manager than Lenny, won a lot less in the game than Neil Lennon, and he was all over it. He was all over it, getting these players that extra drive. Now, I know the point at the time was, what can the gaffer do? What can the gaffer... But then my counter-argument to that is, well, if that's the case, no managers would ever be in the dugout. Of course they can affect the game, they can affect the shape, they can affect the mood of the camp. That was a bit of concern for me, Natasha. It was almost as if he said, well, this is it, my time's up.
It's something we actually picked up on watching the game here. Nielsen's striding about there with purpose, with confidence, giving direction. You look to that and, the players on the pitch are inspired. If I was on that pitch and saw Lennon sitting in the dugout as he was, as you say, in his jacket, leaning back in his seat, does that inspire you? It certainly wouldn't have inspired me if I was on the pitch. So again, it's frustrating. We all love Neil Lennon. No one's ever said anything other than that. But that's not what you need at the side of the pitch when you're 3-3 in extra time and needing someone to give you a bit of a boost. That has to come from the side of the pitch. I don't believe that managers can't do anything from a dugout. They can do something. Nielsen did, and I wanted to see more from Lennon there, and a bit more from Kennedy as well, to be honest. But there's nothing new there.
No, you're right. The big thing again, and on the Quadruple Treble, you've got to mention him from time to time, the bold Brendan Rodgers. What you always got with him was a sense that he had the thing under control, right? And he knew what to do if it wasn't going to plan. He had a contingency. And I've used the example time and time again at Ibrox when big Jozo gets sent off. He knew step 2 and step 3. He knew exactly what to do and he implemented it immediately. And that's what you're looking for from a gaffer. As a fan, as a player, you're looking for somebody that you're looking towards, even when your legs are aching and the chips are down, you look over and you say, no, we've still got this. We're fine. And that influence comes from the dugout. And I know that Lawrence kind of disagreed with me on Sunday. What's your thoughts on that, Lawrence?
Well, Lenny's is obviously a reaction to losing the third goal. And it could be Nielsen's demeanour as a reaction of equalising when they're looking as if they're going to lose the cup final. You would expect two different reactions, whether you've equalised or lost the goal. And we got two different reactions. It's a kind of snapshot. There's 5 minutes to go. Did Lenny get reactions from his players? How much effect can you get when you've used all your subs? There's 5 minutes to go. You've told them what to do. Certainly, if we look at the penalties...
Natasha's not having it. Natasha's not agreeing with that.
I'm not agreeing. I'm not.
4 out of 5 penalty takers, right? He certainly picked the best goalkeeper to face the penalties. He's saved 2 keepers. We've had a snapshot of Lennon on the side after the third goal goes in. He's not going to be jumping about when the third goal goes in. Maybe he's taking a breath and maybe he's thinking what to do. But the biggest effect that you're going to have is the people on the park. We're looking for them to step up and do something. Arguably, Lee Griffiths steps up and scores a penalty. It's brave. Mikey Johnson just back in, steps up, scores the penalty. So I think, Lenny, far from being, he's not perfect, but he's definitely kind of made some correct decisions, we would say, with the team. We know there's problems within the team, not all Lenny's making, but for him to sit back, I think, is probably the snapshot reaction of it. What did you expect when 5 minutes to go, we've lost a really poor goal to lose? we're looking at it and going, geez, the keepers came for it. There's players in the line not doing too much. It's a poor goal to lose, collectively as a team, and individually for some of the defenders and the keeper.
What I would be looking for as a fan is a reaction. We got no reaction whatsoever from Neil Lennon. He's just sitting there letting the play happen. And you got no reaction. You got no reaction. No reaction. He didn't make he didn't change. He didn't change. You've got to change the shape. You've then got a situation where you're 3-3 down, and at that moment, if you gave me 50 quid and told me, put that on who's going to win this game, it was on Hearts.
I've heard you praise Robbie Nielsen. You're saying, well, change the shape. But then again, today you've said Robbie Nielsen's come out and said he didn't change the shape.
That was at half time. This is in the dying embers of the game. This is in the dying embers of the game. I mean, I'm sorry, Lawrence, when it comes to Neil Lennon and being able to affect a game during the game, I think it's his biggest failing. I really do.
Yeah.
But you look at a manager to do it. You definitely do. I think it is part of the responsibility of the gaffer. You've got to affect that game. Yeah, the players can or cannot do as you're instructing, but you've got to instruct something. They're looking over at that point, particularly when, there's people getting taken off because their legs are gone. You can't make a personnel change, but you can certainly shore up the situation. You can switch the shape of your side, and I think that's his biggest failing as a manager.
Change you would have made with 5 minutes to go. Was there a better shape to pick?
I wouldn't have been in a situation. I wouldn't have been in a situation where I'm playing Scott Brown for the best part of 120 minutes. I wouldn't have been in a situation. No, it's not. No, it's not, because I wouldn't have been in that situation.
Change would have made. You've had 2 days to think about. 5 minutes to go to cup.
I would have stretched the Hearts defence, because we weren't stretching them in the slightest.
What's the shape change you'd have made?
You put 2 guys wide. You put 2 up front. There's a simple change.
Who would you have done?
We've got loads of options, Lawrence, but you're asking me to do it. No, you're asking me to do a manager's job. Neil Lennon has to make that change. It's obvious to me and many others that he's incapable of doing it. He's incapable of making a change. And at that point, as I say, Hearts were going to win that game. And he sat there and allowed it to happen. It was engulfing him. And that for me is a big, big failing on Neil Lennon's part. I think we got out of jail on Sunday. If you want me to be completely honest, big time. I
think the biggest guy in influence was John Beaton. Twice he said Hearts should have sent Naismith off. They've got a foul for their second goal. It's 3 each. The ref and the linesman doesn't even on the line don't spot the foul on Hazard. There's some dubious decisions there within Scottish refereeing. You've touched on kind of being behind and how we can affect things. The St Mirren game. It's interesting that the first choice ref get injured in that game, and Rangers going to drop points. There's a number of things were affected out with Neil Lennon's control.
But that's out with That's out with your circle of influence, and the thing that is within our circle of influence is what Neil Lennon can do as a manager. He can make decisions that affect the game. So if you're up against bad officials, and I'm not disagreeing with you, Lawrence, I totally agree with what you said there, and there was some terrible decisions. But if you're up against bad officials, then at the same time, we should never have been in that situation. That's what I'm saying. We're playing Bruni. I think Bruni had done his job, and he shouldn't have played as long as he did. And I did say during the added time, as soon as we go ahead, if we do go ahead, take him off. That's the time to do it, which happened. But we should never be in that situation. And I think that Neil Lennon, as a manager, I'm not calling him a dinosaur. What I'm saying is, during a game, what we've seen with Brendan Rodgers is that he could affect a game. And he knew exactly what to do. He had a contingency. I think Neil Lennon just relies on the players working it out. I mean, there was a situation during one of the team talks, and we mentioned it at the time as well. Lenny wasn't in about the team talk. We've seen that before. We've seen that at Celtic Park against Dunfermline.
You praised Lenny for changing the game with his subs.
Sorry? Yeah.
You praised Lenny for changing the game with his subs earlier this season. So
right, okay. I reckon I could argue. Wait a second. I would argue the toss to say that his substitutions are poor in terms of when he makes them. And the like-for-like substitutions when we're trying to change a game, again, is one of Neil Lennon's MOs, and it's a failing.
I could recall you praising him for his subs. I think it was Roger and Griffiths that came on and changed the game.
You're talking about McDermott Park?
Yeah, You praised him. You said Lenny's got his subs right. He's changed the game.
That's because I offer as much balance as I can, and if he gets it right, I'll praise him for it. But as an MO, as what we would expect of him, is time and time again he fails to do it. Yeah, he got it right that day, and I praised him for it because I'm not anti-Lenny. I don't think any of us are.
He can't affect the game, but on occasions he has.
Well, he didn't on Sunday. It was up in the land of the gods, as is 10 in a row. And this is, I think, a lot of the concerns with regards to, can he change it? Can he turn it around? It's almost as if we're going to limp on to this game against Rangers, go away for a sunshine break in Dubai, and that's the magic wand. Yes, it happened last season. It might not happen this season, though. That's the big thing. He can affect changes. He's not doing it, though. And he didn't do it on Sunday. It was the look of a defeated man when I looked over there. Natasha, you're sitting patiently.
Yeah, I am. I'm letting you try to get out, and then I'll jump in. But I'm agreeing with you, Paul. I don't think that it was even just the last few minutes that I expected to see more from Lennon. You're saying he didn't affect the game. In extra time in the last few minutes, there's more he should have done. For me, that started way earlier. I think the whole second half, I wanted to see more. The minute we lost that goal, our shape went. Our ideas went, our bit of creativity went, and it just stopped working. We were under the cosh for a lot of that second half, and I didn't see a great deal of change being made that was not effective anyway. I think it's a bit of a mentality issue as well with the players. They looked relatively in control in the first half, and the way it's going at the moment, you still didn't feel fully relaxed. Hearts get that goal to make it 2-1. And all of a sudden, it capitulates a bit. And I just don't know how that was allowed to happen. And for me, that's where Lennon needs to step up and make sure that doesn't happen. You're 2-0 up, you lose a goal. You sure as heck make sure your team aren't going to lose another goal and another one after that. That's where I want to see more for him. That's where I want to see him have a plan B. What happens if we go 2-1? What happens if it goes 2-2? Show us something. And like you say, I think that's what Rodgers could do. He had plan B, C and D, and I don't feel Lennon has much past plan A. And when he turns to Kennedy, he certainly looks like he doesn't have the answers either. So where are the answers coming from?
I know.
Yeah, for me, they're not there. There's no answers at the side of the park.
No, you're right. And JP reckons we're having a cat fight, Lawrence. This is just you and me having a chat. So
see what happens off here.
We're in different rooms, Zinco. You don't have to worry about it. Everything's cool. Everything's fine. Now, there's been a few points being made about the Ryan Christie situation. But again, I'm going to throw this one back to yourself, Natasha. When you're looking at Christie and you think to yourself, as a professional, going back to the conversation now with John Hughes, who reckons Christie is one of our best players, and he's one of the players who could go on to a higher level. Now, I don't mean in terms of the club, I'm talking about the league that he's playing in. If he's looking around that dressing room and he's looking at a number of players who are on vastly superior wages to him, and he's maybe been offered a deal that's nowhere near that. Now, we all know who the highest earners are, and he thinks and he believes that he should be in that bracket, and we're not offering him it. As a professional, he will be looking elsewhere. I mean, I don't see it in his performances, though. I know he's got his critics and people think that I can't see anything wrong with Christie, but you look at what he did well on Sunday, you look at the goal that he scored in the semi and the final. Would you push the boat out in the same way that we did to try and get, for example, Shane Duffy up to Celtic Park to keep Ryan Christie?
If Christie doesn't want to be here, Christie can go. And I know, like you're saying, you don't see it in his performances, and he's not throwing his toys out the pram like Cham has. But if Christie wants to go and try his luck in England, and I think he probably sees himself as a bit of a Stuart Armstrong in terms of the way where he thought his career could go. But if he wants to do that, then let him. I don't think he's good enough to keep him, at all costs. I don't think he's absolutely fundamental to the rest of the season. And above all, if you've got a player who wants to leave Celtic and thinks that the English Premier League is better for them, then good luck. On you go. I certainly wouldn't be pushing the boat out to keep him. I like him. I think he's a good player. Like you say, what he offered us in the cup final, his goal was absolutely excellent. He is good. For me, I find him a bit frustrating. I think he overplays a lot. I think he loses us the ball a lot on the edge of the box, which we've already talked about. That creates whole other issues at the back when we lose the ball there. So, but he's good. I like him. He's an asset to the team, but not one I would keep at all costs. If he wants to leave, then good luck to him.
Well, again, if you're not going to get that 100% commitment from a player, I tend to have a view if they're showing it as much as in Cham, because obviously he's looked like a patch of the player we know he can be, then you let them go. Christie, would he be a big loss? When you're looking maybe at the emergence of David Turnbull, it might take the sting out of it a wee bit. We've got Elyounoussi to the end of the season, of course. We've got Frimpong coming in as well. But one final question. That's your last minute Christmas delivery coming in, Natasha. One last question for yourself is a wee prediction for tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night. I think we will see a good Celtic performance. I think we'll see Turnbull and Sorrow back in the middle of the park. I think it'll be a bit more free-flowing, a bit nicer football than we saw in certainly the second half on Sunday. And a 3-0 Celtic to kick us on.
Oh, I hope you're right. Lawrence, what about yourself?
I think 2-0 the Hoops could be a wee bit more conservative. I think, we will kick on, but there's going to be a lot of tired legs in the Celtic team. Ross County's going to have a bit of a lift. I think 2-0. I don't know if Eddie's going to have recovered. He went off because of a knock, so is he going to be fit? If not, let's hope that Griff starts. Even if Eddie is fit, let's hope that Griff starts alongside him.
Agree.
At the back, Duffy went off injured. That's a few questions. Is it Welsh slotting in it or Beaton if Duffy's not fit? So, I think Brown, it's got to be Sorrow in, hasn't it? Mm-hmm. Yeah, but Brown's not going to be there. Even though he made that header and he looked like he had the most left on the park towards the end, and he had certainly the most desire, I don't think he's fit for 90 minutes. I think it's Sorrow. So who partners Julian's a big question. Levi at right back, Taylor at left back. If Duffy's not fit, and even if Duffy's fit, I'd maybe look at changing it. I just think they're too similar. Both of them get attracted to the ball. I'm not too sure who's sweeping and who's going to the ball. Up front, let's hope it's the two and it's Griffey and Eddie.
Well, Lawrence, you might get a wee chance to look at the comment section after the event, but, as is always the case, the opinion is divided. A lot of people agree with you and a lot of people disagree with you, so that's just the way it is. It's all about opinions. But you'll still get a Christmas card from me, pal. Natasha, you can go and get your delivery now. Thank you very much for joining us once again on A Celtic State of Mind. And Lawrence, as well, thank you for joining us on A Celtic State of Mind.
Thanks. Keep the faith.